Let's start with the definition of what a sneaker is, right? Because traditionally the word sneaker just implies running shoes, right? It implies sports shoes. But I think how sneakers are seen nowadays is they look like sports shoes, they feel like sports shoes, they are comfortable, but they're also very aesthetic, and they also sold in limited editions, right? So for example, a Nike, which owns the brand Jordan, Air Jordan, will do a limited edition with Dior, which is that luxury brand, right? And they will come out with maybe 100 of these Air Jordan Diors, and these are really nice aesthetic looking basketball shoes, of all things. And they will sell only 100 of them, and then people will go crazy trying to buy those 100, right? I saw this specific Air Jordan Dior going for $7,000 in the US right now. So that is what sneaker reselling is: buying these limited edition shoes and then selling them at a much higher price on the secondary market. So that is what sneaker reselling is. And going back to your original question, am I a sneakerhead? The story is that, and this is the reason why we're discussing this right now. I had gone for dinner at my wife's aunt and uncle's house, right? And we were there, and the aunt's nephew came for dinner as well. And this guy is only 17 years old, and he's like a competitive cricket player. He's just graduating from college, and he's very talkative. And he really, really wanted to talk about his sneaker reselling business. Before that, I had never really met somebody who does sneaker reselling. I knew it existed, but that was the first time I met someone who was doing sneaker reselling. And just to set the scene, there were 10 people in this room. 7 people were in their 60s. There was one grandmother who was probably around like 85. And there were two of us, me and my wife, in our early 30s. And there was this one 17-year-old kid. And this one 70-year-old kid was making this entire room, where the average age was probably around 50, talk about sneaker reselling for a solid 30-40 minutes. This is including the 60-year-olds, including the grandmother who was discussing it in Gujarati, right? This is the impact of his charisma. But anyway, I in the typical fashion, since we have started this entire podcast, while he was talking, I was trying to figure out what his business model is and all that stuff. And it was pretty simple. Basically, he has connections on the seller side and on the buyer side. So on the seller side, he has connections with the Nike stores. And I'm not going to mention which stores because I don't want to get people in trouble. And these Nike stores, they give him a heads up every time there's going to be some kind of limited drop. So they call them drops. And they either allow him to come in beforehand and just buy out the entire stock, right, at MSRP. So this MSRP could probably be like 10,000, 15,000, something like that. So he buys out the entire stock for that drop at the MSRP. Or he gets told like, hey, it's going to drop at this time, why don't you come and pick up how many ever you can? So he takes 5-10 people, he hires them for the day, and they just buy as much as they can. And obviously, as a 17-year-old, the question is, where is he getting the working capital? He's getting it from his parents, obviously, right? So he'll buy, let's say, 10-15 pairs of shoes at a time, each for 10,000 rupees. So that's like a lakh 50, right? And then he just flips them for double the price. And he starts messaging all the people he knows and asks if they want it. And he's usually also messaging on WhatsApp groups, stuff like that. And if anyone's interested, he'll sell it to them at 2x the price. Very, very simple model. One of the things that confused me is why these Nike stores letting him come early, like why they're letting him buy the stock. And I realized that I've heard of this business model before, right? Siddharth, have you heard of the brand Supreme?
I have, yes.
Yeah, and Supreme was that ultimate hype brand, right? Supreme, they didn't really do much, they weren't that exciting, but they were hyped out of like oblivion. And it's a very similar business model.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to talk about the business model. Go ahead.
And it was a very simple business model, right? And this is what Nike is emulating. They want to create hype by keeping that sense of limited edition around their products. And the entire currency of these products is hype. How much hype can you create around this? And it reminds me of something that we discussed in the episode with John Mullins on all of those different models to create a customer funded business so that you don't have to put too much working capital. And this is one of those business models, is having limited drops. So, just very quickly, I just want to mention what the Supreme business model is, right? So, Supreme, they started off as like a skateboarding brand, just like a normal skateboarding brand. And what they did differently was that they would have very limited supply. And they would have very small inventory. You would not find them in a large retail store. You won't find them like in the US in like a Target or something like that, right? So they always maintain this sense of authenticity, and that increase the desirability of the product. Now, generally, if you were like a Louis Vuitton, you were like a Dior, you were any kind of luxury brand, what is the first thing you would do? You'd increase the price, right? Because that immediately just increases your profit, right? So, and then you can sell more, etc. But instead, what they did is, instead of doing that, what they did is they still kept their prices low and affordable, um, and they converted the revenue that they were losing into creating brand equity, right? I hope this is making sense. um, what was happening was that they were keeping their prices low, but there was a lot of demand for their products. So there would be huge lines outside their stores. People would buy them, and then people would sell them on the secondary market for up to 6 times or 10 times or 20 times of what they bought in the store for that Supreme product,
Was Supreme
right?
making a cut out of the reselling by any chance?
No, they were not. So I'm not 100%. I was very confused at this point. I was like, why does Supreme care about this? But then you know what? I looked into their revenues, and they did $600 million in revenues in 2021. So it's not like they're not making money. They were able to create some insane brand equity to the point that one point they sold a brick. So people were buying Supreme bricks. So there's a lot of brand loyalty around Supreme, and I think this is the exact same thing that is happening with these sneakers. Is like how much hype can you create?
So what you're telling me is the reason he is getting invited to the Nike store is the Nike stores or whoever the Nike decision maker is saying, I don't want it to open it to public. I'm going to give it to a few of these people who are going to sort of go sell it in the secondary market and create that hype of, hey, Nike Dior's 100 pieces, I get one of them, right? Something along those lines.
Exactly. So
You know what
basically,
I would have assumed? What I would have assumed? I would have assumed he's just giving a cut back to the store manager or somebody of the profits, because that's more believable. But this is interesting.
yeah, I mean, he was telling me a story about how Sanjay Dutt had come to the store to buy a bunch of the limited edition sneakers, and the store, in fact, told him to come to the store, buy those products, and then sell it to Sanjay Dutt. And again, I think it's because they wanted Sanjay Dutt to feel like, oh damn, like in order to get these products, I have to go through an intermediary because they're like completely out of stock. So even in Sanjay Dutt's mind, it's creating this sense of like, oh wow, I got a really limited edition deal that I was looking for. I hope
I
that
just
makes
have a
sense.
question. This
Yeah.
17-year-old guy is selling sneakers to Sanjay Dutt, you're telling me.
He spoke about this for a solid 10 minutes. Yes.